I'm joined by Tim Keown, ESPN, and once again, you have knocked it out of the park describing what is going on with not just the A's, but the entire Oakland sports landscape. And this article, it is absolutely phenomenal. The access you got is spectacular. And Tim, I mean, first and foremost, everybody should just stop right now. If you haven't read it, go read it, come back, play this video after that. But Tim, I mean, how did this come about? Is John Fisher really a person? What did all that look like?
Well, Casey, thanks for the kind words, especially coming from you. This is your turf, so I appreciate that. Yeah, I kind of set out, as you know, we've talked. We talked at the first reverse boycott about this whole story, and I've kind of been chipping away at little pieces of it, going out and writing about from the fan side, and then covering the reverse boycott. And I set out to kind of try to do something definitive on this because I felt like it kind of hadn't been done. Nobody had really put all the pieces in one place. A lot of people have done some good reporting on this. You obviously, Scott Osler from the Chronicle has done some good work on this, and I just felt like this was the time to sort of dive in. Now, I didn't expect to get what I got, which was John Fisher. I did not expect that interview. And I tried not to ask too many questions about how that came about because I guess it was just persistence. I had been in their inbox a lot, and I had done a ton of reporting, and then I was kind of waiting for that ask of the A's when I had sort of everything lined up, and I didn't want to go in stumbling, and I didn't want to have to go back 10 different times. So I had reached out to Dave Cavill, assuming that John Fisher was not going to happen, and because I've tried to get John Fisher in the past and haven't even. I mean, you don't even get a rejection; you just don't get a response.
Mm-hmm.
So in the course of reaching out to Cavill, Catherine Akers said, "Hey, we're thinking about doing a select couple of interviews with John Fisher." And I said, yes, please. And it turned out that what they did was they talked to Raj Mathai with NBC Bay Area. They talked to the Las Vegas Review-Journal. And I was the national guy that, I mean, in some ways, just kind of lucked into it. Those other two were a little different because they were pretty friendly. The Las Vegas Review-Journal has been very, very pro A's on this. And, I've tried to be fair. I'm a Bay Area guy. I don't want to see the team leave. I've seen the holes in their game a lot of the time. I've seen, I've kept track, so I wasn't just going to run a Q&A with John Fisher. So it really was kind of the final piece of this was getting that. I think that's what took it from, just a standard TikTok to something that, there's a little bit of a profile of John Fisher in there as well. That's what I kind of set out to do.
Yeah, and for me, I texted you this, but when I was reading it, it was so fascinating and interesting to read through it all, like you just said, in one place. I mean, obviously, I've been covering every single aspect of this as it happened. Like the night everything went south, I'd have sources. John Fisher just called the mayor, and I'm like, oh my, what? It was just coming and coming and coming, and we're talking about it as it happened. But to go back and now read it all in one place with all the perspectives, now sort of detached from the in the moment crazy, it really paints the picture of what fell apart on April 19th and really the whole deal. So, I mean, when you're talking to the mayor's side of things, the Oakland side of things, you're talking to the A's side on things, and frankly, I've offered time and time again to let the A's give me their side of the story, and they've refused. I don't know why. Maybe they don't want to answer some tough questions. I have no idea. But to read it the way you put it was so spectacularly well written. And what do you think, just having heard all the angles now? I mean, is it easy? Is it hard? How do you sort of gauge, like, who's at fault here? Is somebody at fault here? Was it just a deal that couldn't happen?
It's there's a lot involved in that question because there's so much that is unknown to this day. You know, the people in Oakland, the mayor and the officials with the city, they're still mystified, right? They never got an answer. They just got
Yeah.
a see ya. You know, they didn't get an explanation. In the moment, they weren't asking for one because I think they were just angry in the moment and startled. And then since then, I think there's been kind of there's been just this freeze out, right? They haven't talked to each other. I think we'll get to that at some point that they're going to have to talk to each other
Hmm.
soon. But yeah, I think that the fault, if there is fault, is that the most logical way to look at this, I believe, is that John Fisher, he did get cold feet. You know, I asked Lee Hansen, the mayor's chief of staff, do you think he got cold feet? And she said, no, I think he got an accountant, which is
Yes,
one of the
great
many
line.
great lines that she came up with. And I think I just feel like that's where we stand. I mean, I just feel like because John Fisher, his answer to that question is just, well, we were always looking at both places and Vegas happened to win. I mean, that's kind of the way, like, they gave us something first that we could consider concrete. And that's debatable too, right? I mean,
Hmm.
how concrete that is. So it all has the feel for something as big as this is and something that affects as many people as it does. It feels very kind of haphazard. It felt kind of slapdash, right? Like just, oh, we have this, typified by the fact that, okay, we have this Wild West casino spot one day, 3.5 weeks later, oh no, we're going to be at the I don't know. I mean, that alone was just like, wait, how not how serious are they? Because I think they're serious about moving to Vegas, but just how well thought out was this, and how much do they have taken care of, you know? Yeah. So, I mean, even after all this, it feels like I'm left with a lot of questions because they just aren't being answered, and they'll eventually be answered, I assume, but who knows?
Yeah, and one thing I notice about the process is I think that Lee's line about cold feet accountant, I really do think, and you painted this very accurately in your story. I really do think they wanted Howard Terminal. They wanted to make it happen. They did invest to make it happen. But one thing that people forget about is there was a pandemic in the middle of that. It changed the whole financial landscape of the world. I mean, inflation, interest rates shot up, construction costs went up. It changed the calculation for the entire project, which was already way too ambitious from the jump. But back to what you said, I like to describe it sort of as ham-handed, ham-fisted, because you look at the A's approach this whole time, it was, okay, we're going to do this thing at the Peralta Community College site. Oh, whoops, we don't have permission. All right, so now we're going to do it at Howard Terminal, but we also need the Coliseum as a backup. Now, all of a sudden, the Coliseum isn't viable, and we're looking at Las Vegas, and now we've got this great site, binding agreement, Wild Wild West. Oh, nope, never mind. Now we're going to be at the Trop. So it's like,
And
how?
what at the Trop? What
Yes,
does
what
it
is
have a
it? It's
roof?
going to
Does it
be.
have a retractable roof? Can it
Yes.
fit? Does it, the only thing we've seen from that site is, like, I don't know, like an eighth grade art class. The renditions, the renderings of that site are not really pertinent to that site, right? I mean, it looks like
Yeah. Oh, by the way,
there's
now
no,
wad those up and throw them in the trash.
we're gonna get 2.4 million people at 30,000. Okay, that's impossible because you can't fit, unless you're going to be so good that you have standing room only every game. You can't physically put 2.5 million people in a 30,000 seat stadium 81 days. So then that got it. Oh no, it's going to be 32, 33 now. So yeah, there's just a lot of, you can, when you dig into this, as you have, you kind of see where the Oakland people are like, what, like, where's the goalpost today? And I
Yes.
think that a lot of that is reflected in what's going on in Vegas as well.
Yeah, and that's why I found the article so fascinating. You're coming at it from a very even-headed perspective. But every time, you're presenting the A side of the evidence, you almost have to then immediately counter to the realistic what's actually happening. And I thought
Right, exactly.
you mastered that. And if
Thank
you're
you.
looking at this, my biggest question in the entire process is they have this relocation application submitted, but they don't have any, like, I don't know how you could submit a relocation application when you don't have, a master design architect like Bjarke Ingels Group, who's one of the finalists. They're not even selected yet. You don't have real renderings. You don't know how much it's all going to cost. You don't know where you're going to play after 2024. It just goes on and on and on. So how can Major League Baseball even take this seriously?
So when in speaking to a source with Major League Baseball, I got into that, and I said, is my question was, because this is such a rare occurrence, is each relocation application specific to a team? Like, did the Expos fill one out that looks different from what the A's filled out? No, there are actual things in there that have to be dealt with. Like each one has there's a boilerplate, right? That you have to answer certain questions. Among those questions, where are you going to play in the interim between saying you're leaving and being ready to move into the new place? What's the stadium look like? All these things. And they said, well, obviously these questions will have to be answered before the owners vote. Well, now I'm seeing they're going to vote in November, but they aren't. And voting in November means that it had been passed through the 3-man relocation committee onto the 8-man executive council, then onto the owners. So as I try to write, it feels impossible for them to vote in November, or optimistic. And a fully informed vote in November seems really unlikely, because there's just, how do you get all those answers in 2 months?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they filled this one out in pencil. They certainly didn't do it in pen, because they don't have any of these answers. And then Mark Atanasio of the Brewers is also trying to get public funds and threatening relocation. He's the head of the committee. So I think baseball,
and the Royals with Royals and Sherman. I mean, 2 of the 3 people on this relocation committee are, at least from the outside, inclined to say, yeah, go ahead, because I might be there next year,
Yeah, I think they need to be a lot more transparent with this process, if it is a legitimate process. Not to be rude, but they don't answer questions. It's all done behind closed doors, and it's very clear that they really don't have any actual answers for what they're doing. And it seems like now it's the trend in baseball to point to the A's and go, see what happens if you don't give us public money? Come on, give it up. And you're seeing it from a whole bunch of teams now. White Sox, Royals, Diamondbacks, Brewers, the list goes on. Rays are getting public funds now. It goes on and on and on. So I'm not sure what the logic is here. I guess we should probably, since you're one of the few people on planet Earth that has actually spoken to John Fisher on the record, we should probably go back in that direction, because I've been credentialed to cover the A's since 2005, which is right around, obviously, when John Fisher came on board. I've never seen him in person, not one time. And I've been at the Coliseum a lot. So what is it like sitting down with him? Did you believe that he was earnest in his answers? Did you believe that his comments were valid? I know that I've read pretty much all of his comments, and none of them make me outraged. I mean, I think he's mostly honest, but there are some things he clearly left out in this, right?
Definitely. And I think that getting to him, I originally tried to do it in person. We did it this way. We did it through Zoom, which was fine. Nice guy. Like we had a good conversation. He wasn't evil. He didn't have horns, he's just a guy,
So he doesn't look like he does on all the signs at the Coliseum right
now. No, those are, there's some artistic licensing.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, we had a nice conversation. I felt like his answers were kind of scripted. Like, I think that this mini tour that he was on, he had things that he was clearly going to say, and it was hard to get him to pivot off that. I found the same with Dave Kaval. Everything is, oh, we're excited about this new opportunity. Oh, so sad that it didn't work in Oakland. That was kind of the the way that it went. You know, he was engaging. He was, you know, I talked to somebody that said that they had a great quote about John Fisher. Said, I like John Fisher, but I hate John Fisher, and I hate that I like John Fisher. So that was kind of like, okay, that's pretty good. Because he, you know, he is engaged. I didn't get the sense of a real conviction about Oakland or about what he's leaving behind. I mean, they've said all the right things about, oh, you know, it's too bad, and we really wanted it to work, and we understand the frustration. But it didn't come across completely heartfelt. It felt like, you know, and that may be unfair to judge that way, but that's just a vibe I got, was that they got this resolved in their minds, and they're happy with that. They're, you know, I think that their deal was to do, you know, if they couldn't do the massive, you know, Fisher City in Oakland, then okay, we're gonna make this work. And one thing, I'm bouncing around here, but I do think that Fisher, while he was engaging and did answer every question, he was taken aback several times. I don't think he expected the level of, you know, that talking about whether a local, you know, his experience with his family with the Giants in 1992. You know, I happened to be covering the Giants for the Chronicle in 1992, so I have a pretty good history there too. I know what went on there. I know that his family was one of the big names that joined in with Peter McGowan and made that happen. He didn't really want to answer the question about whether somebody has approached him to do what he did. You know, he's like, oh, I'm a barrier guy. If I can't make it work, who can? Well, there are a lot of people that that beg to differ there, that would say, you know, at least give us a shot. That, and there was, you know, there were other things that you know, that they want to just say, oh, we're going to go to Vegas and there's going to be all this revenue, and we're going to have a completely different team. We're going to be, you know, the Dodgers of the desert or something. You know, that's kind of that's the vibe they want to give off. And you really can't, I mean, you can challenge that, but there's no way of saying, you know, where's the proof? Because there is no proof, right? There's none yet. There is the experience that both Cavill and Fisher had with the San Jose earthquakes, which is, I think, illuminating as well. Mm-hmm. And, you know, that Cavill didn't answer that question at all. He just said, we're excited about the revenue possibilities in Vegas. And Fisher went and said, basically ended by saying, well, that stadium that we built doesn't work anymore because it's been surpassed by all the other new stadiums, which, okay, get ready, San Jose.
Yeah, get ready.
Maybe. So yeah, there was all that, you know, it was, you know, it was a good conversation, but there were some moments where it was tense, and where I felt like he ended it by saying, well, I can't wait to read this. You've clearly done your homework. And I took that as a compliment, but I also got what he was saying, you know?
Well, yeah, I mean, I agree with John Fisher then. And I actually agree with Cavill when he said the Quakes to A's things is apples to oranges. It really is. They're two very different things, but it is proof that they can say that they're going to invest and they can build a new stadium, but it doesn't mean they're actually going to. I think that was a notable omission on his part that he didn't want to answer. I had actually, this is funny because as this interview round was getting started, obviously I've been wanting to interview him for a long time too, but you know, I'd heard that Mick Akers was doing it. I heard Raj was doing it before he did it. And then when I heard you were doing it, I was like, I know Tim, I have his number. I don't even have to reach out because I know you're going to ask the right questions. You're not going to let him get over on you on all these things. And I'm, like I said, just reading this is, you absolutely nailed it. But one thing I would say he definitely omitted, and you pointed it out in so many words, is how in the world are these owners going to waive a relocation fee for a market that was ripe for expansion? He really seemed to dodge that question in the article, and maybe you have an opinion on that as well. But for a team that's been on revenue sharing, you know, basically MLB welfare for pretty much since John Fisher owned it, they came off and went back on at one point. to then give them a waived relocation fee in a market they could have gotten expansion money for if they had just solved Vegas. At what point did these owners like look at him and say, like, dude, at some point we got to stop giving you free money. Like, why can't you just handle this?
Right. And I think that, you know, there's this thought that an owner of a sports team is the one like taking on risk or whatever. That's like the least risky investment in the world if you've got billions of dollars, because you essentially you privatize the profit and socialize the loss. I mean, that's kind of how this is gone, or the cost. And you know, that was one. I'm glad you mentioned that, because I asked him specifically, did you request from Manfred that you have this waived, have this relocation fee waived? And he wouldn't answer that. I'm not going to go into the conversations I've had with the commissioner. Well, you know, a Major League Baseball source said, frankly, this deal wouldn't be possible if he had to pay a legitimate relocation fee.
So ding, 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 ding. There's the alarm bells for me, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
If
like
you
how
can't afford the relocation fee,
right,
and this deal doesn't work without it, does he even have the money to get this done? I mean,
I don't know.
I don't want to interrupt you. It's just, when I hear that, I go, wow.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's exactly what every A's fan does, I would imagine, is just like, how are we in this position? And how do you go ahead and, you know, it sounds like, to listen to John Fisher, it sounds like a really, really crappy investment, this baseball team, because we're losing $40 million a year. Yeah, oh my gosh, and we're bad, and we had to pay a draft pick. You know, that whole thing about complaining
we're
that
so bad we got a high pick. Woe is us.
we cut our costs so much that we didn't win enough to get a good draft pick. Okay, that wasn't predictable. But you know, there's this idea that it's all bad and it's all going to be great once they get to Las Vegas. And that's kind of there's a couple of really major disconnects. And one of them is that the relocation fee, the idea of, if you're losing this much money with this safe an investment, you know, what does that tell you about the business acumen at work? And then why do you want to keep it? Like, why not just say, okay, I've made $1 billion on this as appreciation from the time that I started. Let's give someone else a shot at it. You know, it just feels like the inevitable thought that a lot of people have is that once everything goes through in Vegas, that's when John Fisher's going to sell the team, because then it's going to be at its peak, right? That's going to be where people are going to maybe overpay even more than they would right now. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of going off on tangents here, but there are so many, you know, at the heart of it, the question that I sort of set out to answer, don't know if I did it, 7,000 words, I probably should have, but I don't know, is that how did he go from this sort of legacy project in Oakland that would be just like a city within a city to like 9 leased acres in a parking lot in Las Vegas? You know, that's the thing that the only logical answer to that is, well, you know, I didn't buy the $2 million house. I bought the $200,000 house because it turned out I couldn't afford the $2 million house. You know, I don't know. You know, those questions haven't been answered. They've been answered from the Oakland side, but the Fisher side has sort of, you know, they don't want to say that, right? That's not great. That's not a great look right now, is to come out and say, well, we're moving because what we planned there didn't work, or it didn't work for our finances.
Yeah. No, there's several ways I could take this. I'll try to take a stab at it without clouding my own thoughts too much. But I think that what happened was that, the project was just way too big. If they just wanted a ballpark at Howard Terminal, they could have done that. It wouldn't have been that hard. But they wanted the residential, they wanted the commercial, they wanted all the other things. The A's were going to build the ballpark. The city was going to do the offsite, and they were going to bring in developers to build all the rest of the stuff. It was a $6 billion project in which John Fisher wasn't really going to have to cough up $6 billion. He's going to bring in other people. They're going to do it. But then the financials weren't really penciling out. The good residential builders were kind of balking at it. And I think that scared them off. So no matter what Oakland raised, it wasn't going to be good enough. And I mean, to go from this big grand plan to what you just said, a ballpark on land they don't own in a parking lot, I think it speaks to the fact that I think his revenue and his money is evaporating. Gap stock is plummeting. He's losing $40 million a year on the baseball team, which, again, you made the point too. It doesn't really speak well to you as an owner. So I think they went small, quick, fast. And I think you're absolutely right in that they're never going to build this ballpark. I think that the ballpark in Las Vegas could get built. It probably won't be built by John Fisher. I think he wants to get it to a turnkey deal, flip the franchise when it's an all-time high, get out and say, see, look what I did. I made $3 billion on this investment. Now I've done it myself. It's not all inheritance anymore. And I think that's my operating theory. What you said, though, not to go off on a tangent, but I want to circle back to it because I think you made a very, very prescient point is, why would the owners tolerate this revenue share, this waiving of relocation, all these things? Why wouldn't they just kick this guy out or pressure him to sell to somebody who wants to get Oakland fixed so they can get expansion in Vegas, expansion in Nashville? Everybody's going to be raking in cash at that point. And I think what you said is right. It could very well be that there are some assurances that he gets this to a turnkey deal and he's out. Maybe he doesn't sell the whole team, but he sells a major stake. He's going to have to sell some to Goldman Sachs. He's going to have to probably bring in some local Vegas investors to make the team more fan friendly locally.
Right.
I think you're right on with that. And maybe if you want to weigh in on the tangent I just went on, I know I took it a bunch of different directions, but I think that you're absolutely right there.
Yeah, no, I think we're thinking in parallel paths.
Parallel paths.
Casey.
Yeah.
But I think you're right, and I also think that you could make the case that if the A's go to Vegas with a new owner, it's almost like an expansion team, right? The team, as it looks right now, if you get a big money owner who is legitimately going to put money into this team, and maybe has some local ties, whatever. I think you're right. I think that would be a victory, right? I mean, I think that would be a victory for Major League Baseball more so than what is honestly kind of a tainted ownership now, right? That it didn't work in Oakland. All you have to do is turn on an A's game to see what the people that have been his loyal customers think of him. I feel like the people in Vegas feel like they would prefer an expansion team than this
100%.
team with all this baggage. Another interesting thing, talk about a tangent, that I wanted to go back to that I thought was really telling in the story that kind of made me perk up was when I asked Dave Cavell about, this gets to the fan experience and the banners and the chants is, when he came in, he was the guy. He was going to champion. He made the place way better than it used to be. He really did
to his
make
credit,
good
he really
changes.
did do good work.
He definitely did. And when I said to him, okay, going out there now, like they haven't done anything. I mean, they've raised prices and made the experience far worse because they haven't kept it up. They didn't expand on what they started. And when I said, that was your thing, is this customer service and being with the fans. And he admitted to me that after they reopened after the COVID shutdown, we were on parallel paths and that colored our thinking. I mean, that's an admission that we are not doing anything for the fans that are in Oakland. We're not trying anymore.
And that's evident. I mean, really it is, because he's invisible now. He's as hard to interview as John Fisher, and he's the guy that was the spokesperson for John Fisher. Like that was why they gave him an ownership stake, so he could take the questions and John Fisher wouldn't have to. And so he is now invisible. I mean, I saw him on opening night. He practically ran away from me talking about field conditions. I haven't seen him at the Coliseum since. I don't think he's been back. So he's gone away, and he's left them at the Oakland Coliseum, to languish. The fan experience they're just basically mailing it in at this point.
Yeah.
which I don't think is a good business model. I really want to get to expansion too before we run out of time. I know I had a feeling we would probably talk forever once we got started, so I'll let you go
I'm
soon.
enjoying it, so let's go.
I know, right? I had a feeling, though, that this isn't a good business model if you're going to piss off your entire fan base before moving to a kind of commuter market. Like, you need these people to come to Vegas and fill your stadium because you're moving to a much smaller market. So I don't understand why you would, rub it in A's fans' faces on your way out the door. Like, what does not trying anymore even do for you?
I mean, the only logical way to look at that is what it does is sort of the major league model, right? Like it creates talking about the movie. Like if you just knock it down to the studs and nobody comes out, then you can say, see, look, nobody, we have to leave because nobody's coming out here. And it's interesting that they have to make the case in this relocation application that it's Oakland and the market that can't support the team and not this stadium site, that state. They have to kind of blanket this as the entire region is unsustainable for us, which is, I think, is a very difficult case to make. Why they say the Coliseum's not a viable site in a lot of ways, because if it is, then you haven't tried really since the Raiders left. You haven't given it the shot that to make it work. You've just said it doesn't work now that you say you're going to Vegas. So
they also said we need it. Sell us your half county. Oh, now it doesn't work. Right. Now that we have the half. Right. Sorry, continue.
Right. And so now I mean, it's just set up so many different scenarios down the line. If Oakland gets expansion or is it even in line, that site could be held up by the A's. That's something that Scott Osler has written about in the Chronicle very, very well, is that they could still haunt, this whole thing could haunt Oakland for a while, but you're right. The idea of alienating the people that have been most loyal to you and then moving in a place where you're openly saying that you are going to need you're going to need the tourist dollar and the tourist fan to make your projections, essentially. It doesn't make sense because you're going to get, it's going to be a novelty. If there's a ballpark there, you're going to get, Diamondback fans or, Dodger, Angel fans. You're going to get people to go watch their team. But the bulk of what you would assume is going to be the tourist dollar would be A's fans, Oakland A's fans, Sacramento A's fans, San Jose A's. The region here is going to be very important to them there, I would think. And I have not seen the application, but I would bet that point was probably brought up at some point in that, right? You're gonna say, these are the people that are going to help us make all the money that we think we're going to make. But yeah, you're not, the PR has been so ham-handed, to use your phrase. I think it's just almost too late for that,
Yeah, I don't see that really working. I mean, maybe they'll try to say it'll work. I don't see a lot of A's fans. I don't see them having any desire to go to Vegas. I also don't see them having any desire to go to San Francisco. And I mean, maybe we can end on this. If somehow, some way, and I find this to be an extremely remote, outside, probably not possible situation, but if somehow, some way they absolutely need to extend their lease at the Coliseum, I've actually had sources tell me in the past, while all this was going on, that one of the major moments that Fisher and Cavill truly had a meltdown and panic was when they were told that there was really a good possibility that the city of Oakland wouldn't want to extend their lease at the Coliseum. I think they've always planned on extending it until that Vegas ballpark was built. So if they need that, if somehow, some way, Mayor Tao can say, okay, sure, we're happy to do that. Let's make sure we're guaranteed an expansion team, or let's keep the A's colors and name in Oakland, like you mentioned in your article. I mean, maybe it's possible. I'm not sure. But the one thing that I think would nuke all of that is if the Giants actually agreed to let them play at Oracle Park. And I think that would be a just absolutely devastating slap in the face to Oakland and Oakland fans and the whole region, frankly, if the Giants let the A's play at Oracle Park, thus cutting out any leverage the city of Oakland may have had on their way out the door.
I completely agree, Casey, and I think that I think it's partly why the Giants have been so quiet about that. They haven't issued. As far as I know, Dave Cavill's the only one who's raised that option. Um, I think the Coliseum is the only logical option for them, and
Agree.
I
Yeah.
do think that part of this, part of the PR campaign that they've waged, it's as minimal as it's been, has been to sort of create a thaw there. Like if you notice, they aren't savaging Oakland, right? They're saying, everybody gave it a shot, it just didn't work. I think that's to thaw those relations because they know that they're going to have to go to Meritau and say, hey, what can we do here? The Giants are really savvy in a public relations sense, as you know, and I think that by having that floated out there by Cavill, and staying quiet about it, they've kind of allowed they've given them a chance to see what people think of that idea. And I think the main idea that from the Oakland side is exactly what you stated, which is um, it will be a real slap in the face if they play there. And it's also on top of a lot of people harboring lingering resentment against the Giants for the San Jose territorial rights, that whole
Yeah.
thing. So,
Rightfully so.
I don't
Rightfully
think that,
so.
I mean, and we talk about A's fans going to Vegas and having to keep that relationship alive. I mean, the Giants are smart enough to know that people that want to go to a baseball game aren't always Giants or A's fans, right? And the A's fans want to go to a baseball game. They got one spot now, so why do you want to alienate them by doing this? Um, Interesting. I mean, it just depends on how much money would be worth to the Giants to up just have this upheaval in their schedule, and for
Yeah.
3 years minimum. I mean, really, 3 years is probably optimistic. The 2028 opening of a Vegas stadium, when they have to tear down a casino and build, it feels optimistic. That would be best case, is they have to play somewhere for 3 years. So yeah,
Yeah.
again,
I just,
unanswered questions.
how much money is it worth to you, Larry Bear and the Giants, to alienate an entire half of the Bay Area? Hopefully there's no price on that and it won't happen.
And
But
tear up your field, and yeah,
yeah, just all of it sounds
yeah,
bad to me.
it
I could
does.
see them being a token no vote just to try to save face out here, because obviously they need like, a 2/3 majority or whatever. I could see the Giants voting no just to just say that, hey, look, we're good stewards of the Bay Area.
Right.
We'll see what happens there. And I guess lastly, I should say this. I'll let you go because I know we both have other things to do, and I really did know that this conversation was going to end up being way longer than we both planned. But we're two Bay Area guys sitting here talking about a team potentially relocating to Las Vegas. And maybe there's some things that we've pointed out that don't necessarily add up to us, but I want to truly say that I believe that Vegas baseball would be really cool. I think it would actually be awesome, but I do think it would be much better as an expansion team. And pretty much everybody I talk to in Vegas echoes that sentiment. They would love Major League Baseball. They would prefer it not to be John Fisher and Dave Cavill's Major League Baseball. But yeah, I don't want this to be perceived as insulting to any Vegas residents or Nevada residents. I think that Vegas would be the best expansion market. I think Nashville would be amazing. Montreal would probably be cool too. But
Yeah.
this isn't a dig on you, Las Vegas, I guess is how I'd leave
No,
it.
not at all. And I think that you're exactly right. I mean, I think about, it would be really cool to go to Vegas and go to baseball games. I mean, they've proven it with the hockey and the NFL, and they're going to have all four major sports before long. They're going to, whether it's the A's or an expansion team. I think the NBA is probably going to end up there in some way. But yeah, it has proven itself to be a great sports town. But it's just when you look at the dynamics of what it has taken for them to be in that position with this particular franchise, it just doesn't. A lot of things have yet to add up.
Yeah, and to me, that's sort of seems insulting towards the Vegas people and the Nevada politicians who were sold this bill of goods on retractable roof, 9 acres, all these other things. And now it's like, maybe not any of that stuff. We'll see. I don't know. That's how you ingratiate yourself. But Tim, man, phenomenal article. I texted you and I was just blown away by the accounting of everything. And I really hope anybody that watches this has already read it. And if not, go read it and then go back and read Tim's other stuff too, because you have been absolutely spectacular encompassing this entire Oakland saga for many, many, many years. So I appreciate you for that, Tim. Thank you.
Casey, thank you very much. I appreciate all those kind words, and right back at you for your persistence on this story as well.